Well, mate, our listeners have been listening to your singles now for a while, and they are so excited about this album coming out. So, congratulations!
Really?
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry. Yeah, I wish you could see the look on my face right now.
Well,
The
mate.
joy, the pride.
Well, mate, I guess one of the big questions is: this is your debut album. How do you feel now that it's less than a month before it comes out?
Oof. Yeah, I'm excited. It's a lot of work, a lot of time and effort, all coming together for this momentous event. That's what it feels like for me. I'm sure for most people it's like, oh, another album. But no, for me it's pretty awesome, pretty cool.
Well,
Really happy to be here.
going right back, when did you first fall in love with music?
Oh wow. That's a difficult question. I think, as a human, if you have ears, you probably like music. But I guess, like, my family, they're kind of artists and stuff, and they've always had a very eclectic taste in music. So I grew up listening to a lot of different stuff. Jazz, classical, kind of old school rock, Led Zeppelin, whatever, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And my sister is like, sorry, since you asked a question going back in time, I feel like I should give a little bit of background. So, like, my sister, she had a punk band when she was 14, and I was like 12, and this was in Toronto. And in growing up around that time in like the early 2000s, like, I feel like rap was really kind of where it was at.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh man, rap is so cool. Like, I love rap. And my sister had this punk band, like, just like yelling at people and playing the guitar. So, it was like a kind of eye-opening thing for me. I was like, oh, okay, this is actually pretty powerful stuff. And, yeah, I don't know, like, I guess around that time I kind of decided to pick up the guitar and just try it out. Learn some Red Hot Chili Peppers licks or whatever. But it didn't stick for too long. And, I actually had like another career going, which was this dance career. I don't know if you guys have noticed in my videos, I have some dance going on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I kind of got into that, and then when I moved away from home, I moved to Europe at 18. I brought my old guitar with me, like this really crappy. I guess I can say crappy on a podcast.
Yeah.
Even shitty. Oh no. It was like a really crappy Strat knockoff. And I just brought that with me to learn some licks, and like, I don't know, I just started practicing like 6 hours a day. So I guess that's kind of when like the music thing was just like, okay, this is so fun. I want to do this like all the time. Around that time, I guess I was feeling lonely. I had some extra angry energy to start learning metal songs and stuff like that.
So the music that we hear today, that you write, it's so unique and it's got such a unique sound. When did that sound first come through for you?
It's interesting. I've definitely spent a lot of time working on it. So I'm glad that you would think it's unique. Like, I do think, obviously I owe a lot of elements to it, to different influences of mine, but I have really definitely been working on a kind of mixture that feels unique to my style and to my playing. Like, a lot of what I do comes from the guitar and how I interface with the instrument. But okay. I guess it goes back to kind of when I started out, and I got really into like trying to play fast. It just seemed like a fun thing to do. It was like a kind of challenging thing. I think it's probably every guitarist who dedicates a lot of time, like, is just interested in pushing themselves to do. So I got into like guys like Paul Gilbert, Buckethead, like kind of really like shred music, like instrumental shred, and so I would say that's like the roots of it, right?
Yep.
And then like other deathcore bands like All Shall Perish, like those are really huge influences on me in the beginning. And I ended up taking lessons with Chris Story, their guitarist, for like a couple of years back then. So those are like the kind of fundaments. And then I guess I guess you could call me a classic guitar nerd. Like, I do know a little bit too much about like guitar music, if you will, as along with having a very eclectic taste in general for different styles of music. So obviously I'm not just like drawing from just that, but I did come across some amazing guitarists like Andy James, and he introduced me to a guy named Per Nilsson, who you might know. He was the touring guitarist of Meshuggah, and he's the mastermind behind Scar Symmetry. He produced my band's last album, and he actually helped me a lot on the mix for this album. So I know this. Sorry. He was a big influence for me back then, and now I'm friends with him, which is a kind of cool thing. And around that time, this is like 2011, so it's a long time ago, like when I first got introduced to his style. And yeah, that plus Paul Wardingham, who's an English turned Australian guitarist. He's been living there for a long time, so I guess I'll call him Australian. Yeah. Who you might know as well. And he also taught me. I got some lessons for him over a few years, like over a period of 3-4 years. So I would say, like, from those moments, like about 10 years ago, that's when I was like, okay, this is kind of the direction I want to go in. But I still have like a lot of other influences, and like a little bit more from like the gent department and kind of progressive metal. So I kind of just mix it all together. Mix it in with my dance background, having listened to a lot of classical, Tchaikovsky, like whatever, jazz. I really like jazz, old school jazz, new school jazz. So yeah, I don't know. That's a huge amount of words to explain that, but pretty much a lot of like looking inward and like playing the guitar and listening for my preferences and trying to find things that like surprise me, I guess. And that's what I really wanted with this album. You know?
Definitely.
Don't want to just churn out another boring album.
Yeah. And this album really feels like it takes you on a journey when you're listening to it as well. What were some of the goals that you wanted to achieve with this album and the themes that you wanted to explore with it?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Because as much as I like to back up the musical side of it, right, like how I've spent a lot of time, blah blah blah, building up my concept of music. The conceptual side of it has always been difficult for me. Like what do I want to express? Like what do I want to say? And how can I do it through instrumental guitar music? And I think, like, if I'm really honest with myself and the listeners here, and I think I should be, I think it's kind of difficult to know. You know, like I think there's a lot of there's obviously a lot of content there in the music itself, right? Like the soundscape of it, like the different elements, the speed, the aggression, and maybe mixed with like that really also like epic melodic stuff, like how those things come together in music, I think says a lot. And I guess what I've tried to do with the imagery or the concepts and things, like I've tried to tie it in a little bit better with things that interest me, like sci-fi, fantasy. Like I'm a big fan of those genres.
Yep.
In art, but like I guess the message for me, it's been difficult. It's been difficult to think about it. So I think it's the music for me is a lot about my experience on Earth, you know, and the things that I've like soaked up and I've seen. And I think, you know, we're living in a time where opinion, you know, everyone has an opinion, everyone has something to say. So I'm kind of happy to do something instrumental where it just focuses on the music, right? Like what do I have to say with music? This is it. And it still has to do with my experiences. It has to do with my, you know, my love of rap music 20 years ago, or my, you know, my random dance career that, like, you know, most people probably don't feel too associated with in the metal community. Although there has been a kind of resurgence of like contemporary dance in a lot of music videos recently.
Yeah.
But yeah. So pretty much it's like it's about the Earth, and that's why Terran came to me, because Terran is like, I guess I kind of have it as this version of Earth, like a kind of alternate dimension, a different version of Earth where we can kind of look at like some things that are wrong with our society, maybe look at some things that are just how they are, and without being too literal, obviously, because I don't have the lyrics, I've tried to have some imagery with like, you know, cyborgs and like what's going to happen in the future if we keep going like how we're going, or a lot of like personal stuff, like my journey to kind of embetter myself, and how does that also influence my music? Like what has my journey been trying to be like a successful person in this time, an artist who can feel also like validated by their own work. So there's a lot of like personal stuff that I've had to deal with that's come out in the music, and I'm trying to essentially just say, okay, this is Earth for me. Like, this is my experience on Earth. And that's why I think it's so different. Like, I think that's why there's so many different, you know, different kind of moods and songs. I didn't really limit myself too much with the album, let's say.
Yeah, yeah. With that whole notion of Earth there, do you find that you're someone who needs to get out into nature to write, or are you someone that just looks at what's going on in the world at the moment and uses that to fuel their music?
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel very connected with nature, like as a person, but I grew up in a very metropolitan kind of whatever circumstance, right? Like growing up in Toronto.
Yeah.
But I think it might have to do with like being Canadian, and I think maybe you can relate to it as an Aussie also. It's like, you know, you have these kind of like metropolitan cities where it's like everything's supposed to work and it's supposed to be all very like regimented and organized, and then you have this like, you know, you just drive a couple kilometers in that direction, you have like very untamed wilderness.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. That's definitely been part of my personality as well. Like I think it's like kind of ingrained into us. You know, we go camping and it's like, oh, there are actually bears here. Like there are bears in this campground. But also then you go back to the city and it's like you're just in a zoo of people. So I think having dealt with that and having grown up in a really like multicultural environment, I think I've seen a lot about culture. I've seen a lot about the world. There's a lot of things that maybe I don't like and I do like. You know, like I don't know, if you know me as a personally, you'll know like I'm a kind of strong atheist, for example. Like it's not something that I'm making song titles about for this album. My band Bloodshot Dawn does have a song called Godless, but
yeah.
but you know, like those kind of ideas and I don't know, it's just like such a complex topic, I guess. But yeah, pretty much I think being out in nature does allow me to feel connected and to feel like one with the earth. And then I go back to these cities and I see, you know, like the product of multiple industrial revolutions. And I think those two ideas clashing are also a big part of it. Also for the upcoming music video for Terran, the single, it's actually pretty much hit the nail on the head there. It's kind of about that.
Definitely. Morgan,
dichotomy.
You mentioned also your love for sci-fi and fantasy. Could you see yourself one day doing a soundtrack for a video game or a movie or something like that?
I mean, that would be amazing. If you're listening to this, producers, give me a call. No, yeah, that would be amazing, actually. Something that I guess I can talk about it since I'm sorry. Sometimes I struggle with myself if I want to mention these experiences I've had as a dancer and choreographer. But I might as well mention it here because if you guys are interested in how I learned to write music, it comes a lot from the fact that I've actually done a lot of scores for my dance pieces.
Yeah.
And in the last around 8 years, I've done like 10 dance pieces, and 8 of them have been like full length. So we're talking like an hour plus. And for all of those pieces, for the most part, I've done all the music myself. So there is an element of storytelling to my compositions, and I think I've learned that a lot through those through that kind of those endeavors, let's say. And I think it could definitely lend itself very well to games or film or something, because I mean it's essentially the same thing, right? Like you have a beginning, middle, and an end, and you have themes where you can repeat. I didn't apply that to this album specifically, but like I do like, you know, trying to reuse themes, trying to reuse just to give things like meaning, I guess, in that way. So yeah, I mean that would definitely be super interesting, and I think it would lend itself really well. I mean, obviously there's a lot of games these days like Doom who are like very famous for using kind of metal compositions, also instrumental, and like yeah, I mean I think that stuff fits great. Ironically, I play a lot of like, me personally, I like the game as well. Like I play like, I don't know, Rocket League and like Fortnite and those kind of games. And I'm never like, all the music that they have is all like this electronic stuff. And I'm just like, man, it would be so good to have metal right now.
Definitely. I feel like I've got to ask this, seeing I'm also the co-host of a film and pop culture show as well. What kind of sci-fi and fantasy do you love away from music?
That is interesting. Well, I had a daughter like a year ago, so I haven't had too much time to watch any huge fantasy series or anything. No, that's not true, actually. I'm up to date on the Game of Thrones and House of Dragon stuff.
Yep.
I'm definitely a fan of that. it's funny. Now I can actually mention this. Like in the past, no one knew what Wheel of Time was.
Yep.
The Wheel of Time from Robert Jordan. Like I grew up reading that series and reading it over and over again, and it's just such a great series. Unfortunately, they made a show.
Yes.
Unfortunately, they made a show about it. No, but yeah, I would definitely cite that as being like a huge influence. Just like it's just awesome, and yeah, that's a bit more like old school fantasy with magic and horses, etc. A grand battle against an evil figure kind of thing. I grew up playing quite a lot of like D&D based games and reading the Drizzt Do'Urden. I don't even really know how people Drizzt. I don't know. It's a dark elf series. There's like 30 books. Like I quite like that stuff. There's just a lot of like really good action, like the descripting, or like description of like fights, scenes, and the characters. And I just really like that kind of world. Like I always really enjoyed that there was a kind of standard where you had like the different races and the different kinds of people, and I don't know, it was like another version of Earth, I guess. Yeah. So and as for sci-fi, like I've always liked StarCraft. For anyone who knows StarCraft,
yeah.
I don't know if you might not be aware, but Terran is actually the race of humans in that game, ironically. Or maybe not so ironically, and there's also a unit. It's like a huge mech warrior called a Goliath.
Okay. Yeah.
And it says Goliath online when it's finished being built. So for anyone listening, I'm sorry. Those are like kind of like little Easter eggs, I guess.
Awesome.
That I'm un-Easter egging, that I'm cracking right now. I don't know, man. But I've definitely watched all kinds of sci-fi growing up as well. Total Recall, like the Arnold Schwarzenegger stuff. I don't know.
Yeah,
that's probably the first sci-fi movie I've ever seen.
All the stuff that we grew up on as well. And I guess that leads me to the question: where to now for your music? With the album coming out, what are your plans for the future now with your music? Will you look to do shows, or what are the plans there?
Wow. That is, it's an interesting question. I've been so focused on the moment that it's not difficult to see what's going to come next. I do think it obviously is going to depend on how people like this, and it is a bit difficult because I just get feedback from people on my social media, so it's hard to tell how many people I'm reaching. Are people going to be interested in seeing this live? I need to find people who I would maybe tour with. I would love to tour this. I practice the songs and it's all playable. Like, it's all playable by a band, let's say. So it would be cool to play it live, but I do have my other project, Bloodshot Dawn, which I will continue touring, and I am also working on a new band as well, which is a little bit under wraps, but it's also quite instrumental, a little bit more heavy, a little bit more like instrumental death metal. So that's like other stuff that I'm doing. But yeah, as for this project, I think what I wanted to do is I wanted to have a staple. I wanted to finish an album and be like, look, I did an album. This project exists. I've written, I don't know how many songs I've written over the years. I released a lot of songs for like competitions in the past. And yeah, I just felt like it was a shame if I never really finish something. I kept saying like 10 years ago, I'm going to release an EP. But it was never right. I don't know. And I got sidetracked by having a band as well. And I think it was good to have COVID because it gave me like a bit of time to just like look inward, think about, okay, like what can I do by myself and what do I want to do with it? So now that we're here, I'm super happy with the music and how everything's turning out. And I think what I would like to do is I would like to continue to release singles periodically. Yeah. So people can get like updated music from me, and then if they really like it, they can go back and listen to this album, right? And it's like a real piece of work where people can also support me through, they can go and buy my CD on my website or whatever, right? So it gives me a kind of like a platform to kind of bounce off and just like build. And if it comes to like where I have some time for myself in the future, I would love to try and finish another EP or album. Like, it all depends. It is very time consuming because I wouldn't say I'm like a crazy perfectionist, but obviously when you're working alone, you don't have as much pressure from other people. You don't have deadlines. Like it's kind of difficult to finish a solo project, I have to say. Yeah. Yeah, so I would love to tour live, essentially, and I want to keep releasing new music so you guys can just, like, have something.
Awesome. Well, we're gonna play Goliath Online and Terran back to back on our show right now. So, what would you like to say to everybody out there, not only before they listen to these two amazing tracks, but before they go out and grab the album when it's released as well?
Oh, wow. Well, I have some cool announcements. If you do want to pick up the album and you do want to support me, first of all, thank you for everyone who has done so, and even just for listening. Like, it means a lot to me. I'm just some guy, working in his basement, so. Yeah, that's the gratefulness part. I am extremely grateful. And if you do want to pre-order my album, you can be, if you share my upcoming music video for Terran, you'll be entered to win an Ibanez guitar. Cool. So I teamed up with Ibanez. We're giving away a sweet RG 7-string with like a poplar burl top. So it's like, it's pretty fancy looking. So I'm trying to give back. I'm trying to get people to share my music video as well, because it's hard out here, as a totally independent artist. So yeah, what I would just like to say to you guys is thank you for listening, and just keep doing that. Don't feel pressured. If you do want to show your support, I'll be eternally grateful, and you'll have until like the end of December to enter to win. So pretty much you just go to my website, sign up for my mailing list, share the Terran video when it comes out, and pre-order my album, physical or digital. So thank you guys so much, and I hope you enjoy the music.